Everyone thinks a metal key just turns a lock, but one tiny chip in that key head proves otherwise. Break time equals 0, 6 is slash it silently killed hot wiring for good. Cross two wires now and nothing happens. Before the 1990s, starting a car was pure wiring. The key just turned a mechanical switch, so anyone who fed power to the right wires could drive away. Theft was rampant. That's why the EU made these chips mandatory in 1998, and why they're now standard everywhere. It's also why a perfect copy of your metal key still won't start the engine. Let's open the old system first. Hot wiring was simple. The ignition switch is just a middleman. It connects the battery to two things: the starter motor that cranks the engine and the ignition coil that fires the spark. Turn the key, the switch closes, power flows, the engine runs. A thief who skipped the switch entirely could do the same job by hand. Find the battery wire under the dash, strip it, and touch it to the starter wire. Crank it. Then touch the ignition wire so the spark keeps firing. The engine has no idea a key was ever involved. Here's the real weakness. The key only turned a switch. It didn't prove anything. Any metal blade cut to the right shape completed the circuit. And so did a flathead screwdriver jammed into the column. The lock was a physical puzzle, not a question the car asked. A purely mechanical lock can always be picked, forced, or bypassed, because it's guarding wires and wires don't care who touches them. To truly stop theft, the car needed to start asking a question only the real key could answer. So car makers hid a tiny brain in the key. Here's what's actually inside that fat plastic head. There's a chip smaller than a grain of rice, and it has no battery. None. It sits there dead until you slide the key in. This is called a transponder chip. It works by induction. Wrapped around the ignition slot is a coil of wire and antenna. When you insert the key, that antenna pushes out a short radio field. That field passes through the chip's own little coil and generates just enough electricity to wake it up. No wires touch. The field powers the chip across a few millimeters of air. Now the chip is awake. What does it hold? Two things burned in at the factory and impossible to change. One, a unique ID number, like a serial number for that exact key. Two, a secret cryptographic key, a hidden number that never ever leaves the chip. Think of it as a password the chip will prove it knows without ever saying out loud. That secret is the whole game. A copied metal blade turns the lock, but it carries none of this. The plastic head is empty, and an empty head can't answer the car's question. Now the conversation. This all happens in the fraction of a second before your engine catches. The car's computer, the Immobilizer, does not ask the chip for its secret. That would be foolish. Anyone listening could steal it. Instead, it plays a guessing game. The chip can only win if it truly knows the secret. Step 1, the computer makes up a fresh random number and sends it to the chip. Call it the challenge. Step 2, the chip takes that challenge and scrambles it using its secret 40-bit key, running a fixed piece of math. Out comes a scrambled answer, the response. It sends only the response back across the air. Step 3, the car ran the exact same math on its own copy of the secret. It compares its answer to the chip's. Match. The key is real. Only then does the computer release fuel and spark. Now here's the clever part. That challenge is a different random number every single time. So the response is different every single time. This is the rolling code. A thief who records one full exchange gets a scrambled answer that will never, ever be asked for again. Replay it tomorrow, and the car just sends a brand new challenge the recording can't answer. Listening and buys you nothing. So what does 40-bit actually mean? It's the size of that secret number. 40 bits gives you over 1 trillion possible combinations, more than 10 to the power of 12. To guess it blindly, a thief would have to try, on average, hundreds of billions of times, in a car that fights back after a few wrong answers. That's the point. The secret is never sent, not once. Only proof of knowing it crosses the air gap. You can record every handshake for a year and still never see the number that matters. And here's what ties the whole defense together. The Immobilizer doesn't guard the door or the steering wheel. It guards the engine itself. Until that handshake passes, the computer physically cuts the lifelines. No power to the starter, no fuel from the pump, no spark to the plugs. Pick the door lock, the engine stays dead. Snap the steering column with a screwdriver, the engine stays dead. Tow it home and study it, still dead. The chip's answer is the only thing the engine will accept, and nothing under the dash can fake it. So now the whole thing clicks. Break time equals 0, 6 is slash cross the wires all you want. Strip them, spark them, jam a screwdriver in the column. None of it matters. Without a valid rolling code handshake, the computer gives you no fuel and no spark. The engine stays a cold lump of metal. That is why classic hot wiring is effectively extinct on modern cars. Not because the wires got harder to reach, they didn't, but because one passive chip turned the ignition into a locked conversation, and the wires stopped being in charge. Now credit where it's due to the thieves. They didn't quit, they moved. Instead of breaking the math, they attack around it. Relay tricks that stretch your keyless signal from your hallway to the driveway. or plugging into the car's diagnostic port to program a fresh key. But brute forcing that 40-bit secret head-on, still impractical. The chip 1. Strip it to one line. A chip, a random challenge, and a 40-bit secret add up to an unforgeable handshake the engine demands on every single start. That's the whole Immobilizer. But if the crypto is unbreakable, how are thieves still stealing keyless cars from the driveway without ever touching a wire? That relay attack is next.